on the Trump train. You can hop on the Trump train. He's anti-establishment. He is a businessman. And he's so good at negotiating, he makes Democrats vote for him. All we need is you. If you wanna come, you gotta come legally. All the boys for Trump yelling mega. All the girls for Trump yelling mega. All the veterans for Trump yelling mega. Stand up, get the mega yelling louder. Make America great again. Make America great again. Make America great again.
On April 13th, 2017, the U.S. military dropped a massive 21,000-pound bomb on ISIS tunnels in eastern Afghanistan called the Mother of All Bombs, or moab for short. It cost $16 million to make and $300 million to develop. Has a 1-mile blast radius and broke windows hundreds of miles away from the blast zone. It was the first time we've used a bomb this big since World War II. Trump can check that off his campaign promise list. I distinctly remember him saying he was going to bomb the shit out of ISIS. Well, that's bombing the shit out of ISIS for sure. I believe it said there was over 600 ISIS fighters, at least, in the cave system that are, I'm sure, dead or dying, because when cave systems collapse, sometimes you don't get out. So that was just a couple days ago. They might still be starving to death for a good couple weeks. Who knows? Now, the interesting thing about these tunnels is it was actually Osama bin Laden's very first construction project. Well, probably not, but you remember Osama bin Laden, right? Okay, well, these were caves that he built with funding from the CIA when he was, the head of the Mujahideen, which was the people we paid to fight the Russian occupation in Afghanistan. Osama, he brought in dozens of expensive construction equipment from his dad's construction company to create this giant network of caves and rooms. We're talking it had refined, complex ventilation systems, power systems created by a series of hydroelectric generators. So we're talking a self-sustaining terrorist hideout, literally. And remember that Osama was a billionaire, like oogity boogity terrorist guy whose family was all really rich, and so was he. And then the CIA and him funded this underground cave network. Now, the news made it seem like this was some kind of Mexican drug tunnel that we collapsed with these bombs. But that's not what this was. This was a very serious, giant construction project that was still ongoing 20 years after it had been started. And never really stopped. The only thing that changed were the people in charge of it. And even that, not really. They just changed names. They used to be the Mujahideen, then they were Al-Qaeda, now they're ISIS. And I'm sure there were names in between those as well. But it's really all the same people. Some of them die. Some of them get promoted. So, this cave system in Tora Bora also had, we're talking finished, smooth, like walls with, full on actual, like, imagine just a nice hotel, for instance, without windows. That's what you're looking at here. A full on, not just tunnels, like straight up a hideout, like an evil genius hideout. Giant rooms that could hold millions of guns as well. It was thought to be one of the main places where, and it's right on the border of, it's thought to be one of the main places where they mass together to meet up and exchange arms and all that stuff, because it's just so big and it's so hard to map it all. No one really knows how extensive it really is. I mean, imagine you're an evil guy building a hideout into caves for 20 years with as much money as you can handle and all the modern construction equipment you want because your dad owns the largest construction company in the Middle East. So, I'm sure it's a pretty awesome hideout. That's all I'm saying. Makes you wonder where the Middle East would be without the CIA meddling in its affairs. In this instance, we wouldn't have had to have wasted a $16 million bomb destroying a cave network that we also paid for. We spent over $5 million on this Mujahideen group to fight the Russians. So, and this group that now is ISIS. It's graduated to ISIS. But we gave them $500 million. That was just a drop in the bucket compared to what they get nowadays. This is the same group that claimed responsibility for 9/11, remember? Osama bin Laden. Remember him? Yeah. Now, in reality, it was Saudi Arabia who actually did 9/11. But they did it they did it with the intention that Osama was going to take the credit for it. So, and I'm sure Osama took part in planning it or whatever. They were best friends back then. Now we're Saudi Arabia's best friend. Isn't that weird? And they're the people that created this whole mess we're getting to get into. So, after 9/11 happened, we decided to stop funding them because, they kind of blew up our towers and stuff, and it wouldn't have went over well with the American public if we kept giving them money. But it was fine because the bill was picked up by Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait. So we don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to get funded. We started it, but all of our allies in the area, all the rich Muslim countries that don't have terrorists. Have you ever noticed that you don't hear about terrorist attacks in Saudi Arabia or Kuwait or Qatar? It's weird how that works. It's also weird that they expect us to bring in Muslim immigrants, but they don't expect Saudi Arabia to do the same. And when asked why wouldn't they bring in fleeing Syrian immigrants, they said, "Oh, screw that. They're terrorists. We're not going to take those guys in. They'll end up messing stuff up. But you go ahead. You go ahead and take them. Yeah, you take them. This is all your fault. You take them." That's what America is supposed to do. And any of the other Western countries. We're just supposed to take in all these fleeing immigrants. We're not supposed to, think about this for a second. There's plenty of room in all these other Muslim countries that are surrounding, but for some reason the Muslims have to come to, white Western cultured nations to immigrate. Sweden recently, the Sweden government released this video to its people, basically saying, hey, we aren't going to get out of this. We're going to have to deal with these Muslims. So there's no going back to what it used to be like. Everyone should just pick up a hijab and a Quran and let's get to it. Let's get to being a partly Muslim culture and understanding their ways and all this stuff. And don't mind all the rapes and killings. Don't mind that at all. If we just, the nicer we are to them, the less they'll want to rape and kill us. Well, that's not really working out so well. That's all I'm saying. Maybe you should go with a different plan of action. Anyways, back to terrorist Middle East. This is a quote from Andrew Tabler, a senior fellow at the Washington Institute Institute for Near East Policy. All right, so who is he? I don't know. Just some guy that sounds smart, so I'm going to read his quote. Everybody knows the money is going through Kuwait and that it's coming from the Arab Gulf, in reference to the terrorist money. Kuwaiti's banking system and its money changers have long been a huge problem because they are a major conduit for money to extremist groups in Syria and now Iraq. And that was written before, so you can add to that Syria as well. You see, after we took Saddam out of power, we told his Ba'athist political party that they weren't allowed to be part of the new government in Iraq. So we got all this former ruling elite, secular people, by the way. They're like the not Muslims. They have no place to go, so they ended up joining up with the extremist Muslims, with the ISIS in Iraq. I mean, that's why Iraq is like all ISIS now, because the people that used to ran the country were like, yeah, I mean, they wouldn't let us be legitimate politicians like we have been our entire lives, so I guess we'll join up with you because you will let us run our country again. So ISIS is kind of being ran by the same people that ran it. Iraq is now being ran by the same people who ran it under Saddam Hussein, just with the addition of like beheadings and killing gay people. But other than that, there's traffic lights, there's potholes are getting filled. Like, it's actually being ran like a country. It's kind of crazy. That's what no one really wants to talk about. And that's only because, again, we didn't let the people who were running the country, the Ba'athist party, we said, nope, none of you. You're not allowed to be in the government anymore. We made that, statement as soon as we, took out Saddam and, took control of Iraq and then handed the power back to them. But not really. I mean, we just gave it to the puppets that we chose. So that didn't work out so well. Now they're part of ISIS. And now ISIS and them are running Iraq. And this has been like this since Obama pulled our troops out in 2011. And, right after they did that, the CIA then orchestrated the Arab Spring, in Yemen and Egypt, Tunisia, and Syria, using the same tactics they used to destabilize South American countries in the past. You know what I mean? They literally would go in with all their American dollars and just buy a bunch of rebels and say, oh yeah, you don't like your government, right? Here's a bunch of money. Go buy some guns and take back your government. And they're like, yeah, thanks, you're a hero. Needless to say, it's amazing what, 100 or 1,000 well-armed rebels can do. So that's literally all it takes. So the CIA, with this whole Arab Spring, though, they literally paid for it with money from Iraq, you see? Because they lost over $8 billion while they were rebuilding Iraq. And then that $8 billion lost dollars went to pay for all these rebel groups in the Arab Spring. So they wanted... The whole point of this was just to create chaos and disorder and, strengthen our only ally in the region, Israel, which is a joke because we spend $3 billion a year just giving it to Israel just to go, hey, here's some money. And they have over 200 nukes. They don't let UN inspectors in, and that's apparently just okay. And they regularly commit war crimes by using depleted uranium shells and phosphorus weapons on people that are in the Gaza Strip. Palestinians, which that whole thing's kind of a big, giant. I could do a whole podcast on the whole Israel, Palestine, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole messed up thing. But the point is, they are not our best ally. I mean, in fact, they fired on a U.S. ship in like the 60s and killed and injured about 200 servicemen. And it was an act of war, and we just let it go because we knew they were just having a tantrum. I mean, it was messed up. But anyways, back to talking about the destabilization of the Middle East here. The fall of Libya was orchestrated by the U.S. as well. we funded the rebels that were against Gaddafi in 2001. Then the newly funded Ansar al-Sharia then attacked our embassy and killed our ambassador, as well as his security force, which you all have probably heard about, the whole Benghazi thing. Hillary Clinton had provided the funding to these rebels to oust Gaddafi, which is another secular leader that was a dictator, but ran his country and his people had decent lives. And as long as you weren't extremist Muslim, everything was fine. I wish that we still had Saddam and Gaddafi around. Now Libya is a failed state, just like we wanted. It's in control by 3 different rival rebel groups, none of which get along. And the real power lies in the hands of just armed militia. The slave trade is now alive and booming in Libya as well. Often, migrants coming from Africa trying to get to Europe are captured or tricked into becoming slaves and sold literally on slave blocks in Libya. So that worked out real well. So we went into Iraq, took out Saddam. Now we have ISIS running Iraq. We went into Libya, and I'm sure ISIS will come in there and unite those rebel groups, and they'll be running Libya too soon. So now we're going to do it to Syria. The last of a dying breed of moderate Muslim countries. Ones where people don't have to wear hijabs and are allowed to drive cars if you're a woman. Things like that. That's really what this is all about. It's all about women driving cars. No, but it is about women not having any rights, men being the master, of his realm at all times. I'm not sure if you've noticed that out of Muslim culture, but men are definitely supposed to be the most important, and women are just kind of a second at best. They might consider their stock of animals as second, and their wife is third. Who knows? Point is, they don't value them very much. Anyways, we want our ally, Saudi Arabia, to be the only Muslim power in the Middle East. Every other country I've talked about, don't forget about Iran, by the way, are standing in the way of that. Saudi Arabia is the entire reason we have terrorism. I'm not sure what you know about Saudi Arabia, but I'll give you the 30-second spiel. About 100 royal family members run the entire country, and they are the ones responsible for pushing Wahhabist schools upon the Middle East, which are funded by us and them, by the way. And these Wahhabist schools are the Muslim schools where women aren't allowed to learn how to read, and they're taught to hate anyone that's not Muslim and, kill all infidels. Literally just mini terrorist training camps. That's Saudi Arabia. That's who does that. No one else. It's just Saudi Arabia. Wahhabism is their royal religion. They don't even let people in their own country practice it, unless you're a royal family member. Because it leads to, if you're not a rich royal person and you're a Wahhabist, then you're a terrorist. That's the problem. It's the same reason why they don't want these Wahhabist Muslims coming in their country as refugees, because it doesn't work out so well when you're a poor Muslim and you're a Wahhabist. But that doesn't stop them from continuing. In fact, that's what they want. They want all these people to spread all through Europe and America and take over the world. That's their ultimate goal. Have 100% Muslim religion everywhere. Just ask any Muslim. It's kind of the goal of the Muslim religion, is to spread the Muslim religion by force to the rest of the world. And only once you do that will you, ascend to the best possible reality or something. I don't really get the whole Muslim religion aspect. I don't really get religion, period, but I definitely don't get a religion that you just plain out not allowed to get along with any other religion. That doesn't make much sense to me. Doesn't seem like it would foster a good working relationship with your neighbors, which, if you know anything about history, Muslim religion doesn't. So, WikiLeaks released an email from Hillary where she said, donors in Saudi Arabia constitute the most significant source of funding to the Sunni terrorist groups worldwide. She said this while she was Secretary of State. So I'm not joking. That's right from Hillary's mouth. As Secretary of State, they are the leading funder of Sunni terrorist groups worldwide. That's our closest ally, Saudi Arabia. The place where you can, if you're not a citizen of Saudi Arabia, you can literally be killed in the street, no problem, no crime committed. It's only a crime if you're a citizen of Saudi Arabia. No big deal, especially if you're a woman. So let's get back to Syria. Assad, he became president in 2000 after his father's death. 11 years later, as part of the Arab Spring, Syrians started protesting his dictatorship. So it's not like they had it all that bad until they saw these other countries rebelling and getting their dictators to step down or not. Well, Assad saw what happened. And let's say like here in Egypt, you didn't really accomplish anything. They voted in a very Muslim Brotherhood, literally the Muslim Brotherhood. That's who was running Egypt for a year before we decided to not let them anymore and we basically put back the dictator. And then you have Libya. That didn't work out well for Gaddafi because someone took a knife and stabbed him in the anus until he bled to death in the middle of the streets with all of his citizens around him all beating him. That's how he died. It was not good. Assad didn't want to go out that way. So he decided to fight back against these rebels that wanted him to step down and have democratic elections. You see, much like Saddam, Assad is secular. And that's what you need to run a Muslim country, that you have multiple differing sects of Muslim people. You got to have someone that's on the outside to be the power guy, to get those people to get along. I mean, I know it's kind of barbaric, but so is the Muslim religion in these regions. They are very barbaric. So you have to have someone that doesn't give a shit at all about your religion and just lays down a few basic principles and laws and says, listen, we're not going to kill each other. We're not going to blow up fucking schools. We're not going to kill children, and anytime you do this, I'm going to literally feed you and your whole family to dogs. That's what's going to happen. Like, cause I'm a crazy dictator guy, or I'm going to gas your whole neighborhood, or just, that's the point. You have to have someone that's going to bring their hammer down so hard on these people that they'll get along with people that they're sworn to hate. That's what it really comes down to. Because also, I'm not sure if you know this, there are lots of Christians that live in Syria. It's not just Muslims. And Assad is the person that keeps the Muslims from killing the Christians. And ever since this war has started, hundreds of thousands of Christians have been killed by Muslims. That's what happens when you don't have a secular leader running the country. And this Assad dude, he wakes up in the morning and put a 3-piece suit on, shaves his, beard off. He is just a dude with a family trying to run a country. Yeah, he's a dictator. Not saying he's a great guy in many aspects, but someone's got to do it. If not, you get Iraq and you get Libya, and you get all the other failed states that have been created in the last 10 years. I mean, what are our options? So Syria's, first rebel group that was formed was the Free Syrian Army. And this was after, everyone started protesting. Basically, the protesters turned into the Free Syrian Army, right? Then Al-Qaeda was like, hey, Syria's looking pretty hot right now. Let's get in on that action. So Al-Qaeda sent people into Syria, maybe to join up with the Free Syrian Army. But the Free Syrian Army, you see, they're not an extremist Muslim group. They're like people that actually want just to kind of be free of the dictatorship from Assad, right? So when Al-Qaeda went to them and wanted to join up, they were like, nope, in fact, you're our enemy. We don't want any part of you. We're going to try to kill you now. So they haven't gotten along with Al-Qaeda ever since. So, and again, this is an army that was only formed of basically protesters, army deserters and its own rebels of Syria. So these aren't necessarily Muslim extremists, is my point. Now, Al-Qaeda, even though they sent these people in there, Al-Qaeda's own people also split into two groups, apparently not being able to get along. One was called Al-Nusra, and one was ISIS, And because they couldn't agree on what to do and who to kill and what the best way was to do it, they just decided to also be each other's enemies. So you basically have a war here where you have the legitimate government of Syria. I mean, as legitimate as a dictatorship is, okay, Assad. We'll just call that one Assad. And then you have the Free Syrian Army, who actually, their only goal is to take out Assad. And they don't really, they will fight against or with Al-Qaeda or ISIS, depending upon whether or not that goal is to take out Assad. That's kind of their gamble. Whereas the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda people, they don't get along either. And sometimes they fight with the Free Syrian Army too against them. But they also are there to mess with Assad. So, like if you're Al-Nusra, you have 3 enemies. If you're ISIS, you have 3 enemies. And you occasionally work with 1 to 2 of them, depending upon if it's the greater good or if it's just taking over a territory. Because they're all fighting for different territories within Syria as well. And because at the end, once the Assad regime falls, he who has the most territories is going to, control Syria. And that's, yay, right? So, we either, best case scenario, if Assad goes, is that the Free Syrian Army people will get to take over. And they're still willing to fight with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and do some pretty terrible shit. So it's not like that's any better. I mean, it's not. And worst case scenario, yeah, you get Al-Nusra or ISIS running the country, which again, those are very bad, super bad. Christians all dead. People that don't want to be extremist Muslims also have to leave or be dead. Those aren't, the only way that Christians and non-extremists or, Muslims are going to even be kind of okay is if the Free Syrian Army wins. And I hate to break it to you, that's probably not going to be the winner here. They're the least favored of the 3 in ways of having as much of the piece of the pie right now as possible. And of course, where do these people, all of them, get their funding? Oh, the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. We fund all of them and give them air support when we can. And no, anyone but Assad. We don't give Assad any help because we don't want him to be in. We don't want Assad to run Syria because he wants to sell oil using euros instead of the US dollar. Just like Gaddafi did, just like Saddam did. That's what happens when you try to drop the petrodollar. We just take you out. So nope, well, we'll just talk to whatever rebel groups take your place because they'll still sell the oil in the US dollar because they're going to sell it to Saudi Arabia, who is our ally, who only buys oil in the US dollar. which is our deal we have set up with them. That's why Saudi Arabia gets to do whatever they want in the world, because as long as they use the US dollar to buy and sell all their oil, then our economy stays afloat. And that's the harsh reality. Anyways, back to Syria. So it's a who's who of the worst actors in the region when it comes to destabilizing countries and supporting terrorism, including us, by the way. And after all, it worked out so well for Iraq and Libya, right? We can't let our government propel us into another war. We have to stand up and let Trump know we don't want this. And thankfully, he did go on an interview the other day on Fox and say that we're not going into Syria. But he's also, him and the defense, Mattis guy, the General Mattis, they've both said pretty much if there's another gas attack from Assad, well, then I guess those 15,000 troops we have amassed on the border might need to go in. You know what I mean? And how long is it going to take one of the other three groups that all of their goals combined are to take out Assad? That's all three of them want that. So if all you got to do to get the U.S. to also take out Assad is to kill some more civilians with some gas, chlorine gas, like any of you could Google chlorine gas, go to your hardware store and make some chlorine gas in your bathtub and kill like your whole neighborhood, like today. That's how easy chlorine gas is to make. It's like 2 ingredients, okay? I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but you get my point. It's not hard. And that's not going to be hard for one of these 3 rebel groups to do, I guess is my point. Little chlorine gas attack and boom, now Bob's your uncle. We're going to go in and take out Assad, And, you can't really think that Assad was responsible for these gas attacks. There hasn't been a proper investigation by the UN, just like there wasn't one in 2013 when that one got blamed on Assad as well. And that was also rebels, by the way. There's just no reason why Assad... first of all, Assad obviously has denied his responsibility for all gas attacks, okay? So even though we make him out to be a boogeyman, if you go look at any interviews he's done, that's not his game. He doesn't want to gas people. Like Saddam would be on record being like, yeah, I gassed him. Not Assad. He's not just lying. It's because he literally doesn't need to gas people. That's not his... He wants the actual people to like him. He was weeks away from having stability in Syria. His armies were actually turning up the heat on those rebel groups with the help of the Russians. And this gas attack conveniently came on at a perfect time to, halt Russia from helping Assad kick back these rebel groups, honestly. And that's what it's all about. And then we sent Rex Tillerson to Russia to, try to negotiate with Putin for him to drop support for Assad. Meanwhile, Russia that's not their game. I don't think they don't understand about the whole Russia, China, Iran deal. Well, most people don't. They all have a deal to buy and sell stuff in euros and create a second currency, like an Asian dollar type thing, like an Asian euro that they're trying to work out. That way they can completely get away from both the euro and the US dollar for a currency stabilization. Because Iran's got a lot of oil. That's kind of what a lot of this war is all about. Just Iran and how their oil is going to be sold and what currency is going to be sold in and which country it's going to be piped through. It's all about Iran. That's why the Republicans for the last 5 or 6 years have just been begging for us to just, invade Iran, start a war with Iran, because instead of if we just would have done that 10 years ago, we wouldn't have needed to destabilize the other 5 countries that we have. We did all those to cut off all their access to any other, just to isolate Iran completely, pretty much. That's why we did that. It's all been about Iran. So Donald Trump saw on the television those dead babies dying of toxic gas, and Ivanka begged, Daddy to do something. And so he did. He dropped all those Tomahawk missiles that cost us like, I don't know, $150 million or something ridiculous. And, in the process, he joined all the other presidents before him and taking his seat at the military-industrial complex table. Assad was talking with Charlie Rose of CBS News, and it said this concerning the attacks, the gas attacks. This is directly from Assad. It's not traditional war. It's not about capturing land and gaining land. It's about winning the hearts and minds of Syrians. We cannot win the hearts and minds of the Syrians while we are killing the Syrians. We cannot sustain 4 years in that position as a government. In other words, he's trying to say we're not the people gassing people. While the rest of the world, most of the world, and the great powers, the regional powers, are against me and my people are against me. That's impossible. I mean, this logic has no leg to stand on. This is not realistic, and this is against our interests as governments is to kill the people. What do we get? What are the benefits of killing the people? And he's right. Why would he kill his own people? Why would he gas his own civilians? Especially when he's talking about these rebel groups will invade a neighborhood and slowly convince everyone to join their side so that they can control, that's how they literally gain territory neighborhoods at a time. And if Assad was gassing his own people for real, it'd be much easier to convince anyone to not be on Assad's team. Assad said in another recent statement with an interview that Trump has chosen to become part of the deep state. Let's just hope he's wrong.
Make America great again. Make America great again. Make it great again. Donald Trump never take a day off. And if you voting for him, you know that it's gonna pay off. Cause you know he bringing jobs back to us. You know that he bringing jobs back to us. The U.S., yeah. Look, liberal politicking ain't gonna get us anywhere. Donald Trump, he don't care, no. He flipping votes in the states that matter the most. And he's chilling in his Trump jet going coast to coast. Donald Trump built a wall. Donald Trump built a wall. Built a wall. The meme magicians, the madmen, the MAGA boys, you got it all.